the BIS and IMF, World Bank, and 63 other banks to this day have complete and total immunity from search and seizure, from investigation. Most of them don't even pay taxes. You can't audit them. And the worst part is, at the same time, they gave it to the United Nations, and 76 tentacles of the United Nations, including UNESCO, World Health Organization, they all also still have this extraordinary amount of immunity on our soil.
Hey friends, welcome back. That was Mel K. She's here to discuss her new book and the controllers of the darkness of this world. You want to know who runs the world? Well, she just told you, and it's a lot bigger than just Israel, but in my view it does lead straight back to the House of Rothschild in the Orsini family and names that many of us don't even know. That's the state of the state, and this is a broadcast you should share far and wide. Before we start, just a quick word about a valued sponsor. So guys, I've been telling you about my 72-hour fast, and my friends were telling me you gotta drink 3 bottles of water every day, not 16-ounce bottles, the 32-ouncers. So I turned to Native Hydrate, which stands out of the crowd. It's a 39-in-1 electrolyte and amino acid formula. Now, most people know they need to drink a lot of water and a lot more than they do. But after age 50, your body's water reserves drop, and without the right electrolytes and amino acids to hold fluid in your cells, you'll feel fatigued, foggy, and cramped no matter how much you drink, especially if you try a fast. U.S. Army researchers discovered that for older Americans, the optimal hydration formula isn't high-sodium sports drinks. It's amino acids combined with low-sodium electrolytes. And that's exactly what Native Hydrate delivers. 3,000 milligrams of amino acids, key electrolytes, and only 200 milligrams of sodium per serving. Just the right levels for everyday use. It's available in mixed berry, peach, mango, and tangerine, only has 5 calories per serving, and there's no artificial dyes. This is the hydration you need. For my special offer plus free shipping, head to nativehydrate.com/SGT. That's nativehydrate.com/SGT. You can try it risk-free with a 365-day money-back guarantee. The link is below this video. Hey friends, welcome back. Thanks so much for click and play. Absolute pleasure to have you all back. And we've got a lot to cover in this one today with my returning guest. She's an author and she's the host of The Mel K Show, themelkshow.com. You can find it over on Rumble at 12 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. And she's got a new book. You can pre-order it. It's called Infiltration Instead of Invasion, America Betrayed, 1944 to 1954. We'll talk about the importance of those dates and why the betrayal didn't start far, far sooner, like 1910 in Jekyll Island. Mel will stitch that together for us, and we're going to start with some topical news, but let's welcome our guest. Mel, how are you?
Hello. It's been way too long. I'm excited to be back with you, and wherever we go, we go. We've been at this a long time, so it's fun to chat with you every time.
Well, I appreciate you coming back, and we're going to plug your book, and we're going to talk about it in more detail as we get through this thing. I know people can pre-order it. Is that correct?
Yes, they can right now on the melkshow.com website or Amazon or wherever you get your books.
You know, I'd say this, guys, when it comes to authors and people whose books we promote, it's kind of fun to see them trend over on Amazon, right? Because the normies don't know jack squat about any of this. And as I've said so many times, Mel, they don't speak the language. I mean, frankly, if you, dear listener, and I know my listeners and yours do know this stuff, but if you're trying to talk to a neighbor or a family member or a friend, a colleague, and they don't speak the language, if they don't know what a central bank is, if they don't know who owns the central banks, they don't understand the House of Rothschild, the House of Rockefeller, the Morgans, the Dulles brothers, well, they're not equipped to have a conversation at all. And it feels like America's been so dumbed down that a lot of these young women and these man on the streeters can't even tell you how many states there are. They can't tell you what the capital of the United States is. I tell you, are you as shocked as I am what we're going through right now? And we're going to talk a little bit about Trump, too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm shocked, but I'm not. I really believe that, and this is kind of why I wrote the book, is the enemy is within and has been hidden from us for a very long time. And I believe that a playbook that was many, many years in the making overseas in the EU was flipped on the United States of America when there was a Five Eyes coordinated coup against the duly elected president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, in 2016. To date, we are in a continuing color revolution now. And, it's just if you followed the color revolution model from the beginning, which is why I start with the Dulles brothers as the actual end of our sovereignty legitimately, then you don't really understand that this is not new. It comes out of Gene Sharp from Dictatorship to Democracy, who was a real, revolutionary Marxist, never ending revolution, the whole thing. So we have been manipulated to the extent right now that I don't think people know what to believe about anything. But if you look at people that have written about totalitarianism, like Hannah Arendt, in Origins of Totalitarianism, she said the best place for a country to be swallowed into a totalitarian system is when the public believes everything and nothing at the same time, when they think everything is possible and nothing is true. And that is where I think we are right now. And the people in Hollywood and the media, I believe them all at this point to be operatives in a basically a controlled demolition of the United States of America, and they are all in on the global governance model that you and me and those that believe America's birthright was a constitutional republic by the people for the people. Well, many people within our country and outside are done with that, and that is, I believe, the biggest thing is the sovereign nations that do not want to join Agenda 2030 are being hammered from within with color revolution tactics that most people can't even see and don't even know about.
I wanted to start with the SpaceX IPO and the insanity of these markets, but maybe we'll get to that later because we've just jumped right into the deep end, which I actually like. And I want to just ask you, so Trump 2016, we can agree on some of the things you just said, but Trump in 2024, I feel like it's invasion of the body snatchers. This guy has changed, in my opinion, in so many ways that I personally have a lot of problems with President Trump, and I will play a soundbite that I think is refreshing from Trump in just 1 second. But 2016 and 2024, it seems like two different presidents, two different men. And as we get into the weeds here and we talk about these secret societies, we talk about these bankers that have really wrapped up the United States and own and control it. They bought all the politicians. You note in your book immunity for the IMF and World Bank in 1945 under
Yep.
Truman, the Dulles brothers, of course. They played a role in that. They also played a role in founding the CIA. But
Yes.
just before I get off track too much, when we think about the Rockefellers, the House of Rothschild, and the Federal Reserve specifically, the printing presses that make our money, our quote unquote money, these Federal Reserve notes of debt out of thin air, you can't understand that language without understanding the Rothschilds, the impetus of Israel in 1948, where it sits because of the Balfour Declaration. And here's one of the things I'm really having a hard time reconciling with Trump, and I just want to know where you stand. He's
Okay.
covering up the Epstein clients list. He's covering up the assassination of Charlie Kirk. He's covering up what happened in Butler, PA. This is all on the record. And if it's not him specifically, it's his FBI. And and Kash Patel, who was once a guest on this show. Meanwhile, you have Jared Kushner and Ivanka on Nat Rothschild's quote unquote boat with this Albanian island. Now, you can't separate the Trump family now from the Rothschilds. So, where do we stand on Trump right now in your eyes?
Well, I don't think you ever could separate him from the Rothschilds from very far back. But where I stand right now is I believe that the danger to our country is has very little to do with Donald Trump. In fact, at this point, I don't know how much he can get done if he wanted to. What I do believe is that the U.S. taxpayers, since what I wrote about in my book, certainly the BIS and Bretton Woods and all of that, I firmly believe that the U.S. taxpayers were set up purposely by two Wall Street lawyers, because people don't know that the Dulles brothers were actually Wall Street lawyers that started the entire apparatus of the supranational, international, I call them the international banking cartel and the global public-private partnership. But I do believe that they set it up so that the U.S. taxpayers paid for the entire Cold War, a war on a tactic that was never defined and continued to change targets. Then I believe the U.S. taxpayers paid for the entire war on terror, another war on a tactic with no defined target that was eventually turned on us, and then it gave us the unconstitutional Patriot Act. And from my work, I believe that we paid for the entire fraud that was climate change that was kicked off in the 90s by George Soros and Clinton. That was all about capturing the natural resources. So my whole situation right now that I'm looking at is I think that they are dismantling the architecture that I explain in my book, and I think Trump is involved in that. But at the same time, what is going on in Israel and Ukraine? I believe both these countries have one thing in common. They are hubs for endless war for profit. And they have been since they were established. USSR fell, and Ukraine has never been a democracy or a sovereign nation. It has always been used, I believe, to plan World War III all the way from the 90s to date. But Israel, the same, I believe. And this has nothing to do with Judea or the Jews or the history of the land there. This has to do with being, I believe, a global node of the CIA MI6 Five Eyes intelligence operation hub. Because I don't believe that the CIA or the Five Eyes was established to protect our nation or any nation. I think that it was established to protect the international banking cartel and the global public-private partnership from us. And anyone that got in the way of it was destroyed with regime change or assassination, or their countries turned into slave camps like Libya, or and this whole model. And you were right to bring up the Jekyll Island and the Federal Reserve. That was the first in of the international banking cartel through the Traders Wilson administration. But what really changed, I think, was the financial system being created to launder, loot, deceive, and destroy America from within. And as far as what he's doing in terms of finance, I at least on the global scale, I see a lot of positives. But it does. As for Israel and what's going on now, I have had sources that told me that essentially that Trump was and the regime in there, Rubio and the rest of them, were told that if the U.S. did not participate in going after Iran, that they were going to use nuclear weapons, and that is the reason that happened. I don't know if that's true. I do believe that what I'm reading today in terms of the deal with Iran will change the Middle East forever into a very different scenario if it is pulled off, and kind of move the whole endless war for profit that has been Israel, as far as I'm concerned, into a very different thing. But as I said, I think Israel and the Mossad is a part of the international intelligence operation that has been going on since the 40s. And it is really an intelligence hub for the entire world of NATO.
I keep saying, and I will continue to say, that Rothschild equals Israel, Rothschild equals
Yeah,
Epstein, or Epstein equals Rothschild. It's in the emails, right? As you may know,
yeah.
I represent the Rothschild family. So when you say that you see signs that I think Trump, you would mention, is dismantling the architecture, dot, 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 do you mean of these global financial controllers? And if that's the case, can you cite some evidence of that for me, so in my
Yeah.
audience, so that I can be a little bit more pro-Trump? Because right now I feel like he is in the pockets of these same financial controllers and oligarchs. And we've got people, I call them the trust the planners, Prometheus Action,
Oh,
Susan
yeah.
Chakinda, and so many people on X
The
who just
planners.
seem to bend the knee, right? And they trust the
Yeah.
plan. What is the plan we should trust? Is there one in your view? And what examples, what evidence of is there of him dismantling this architecture of the financial controllers?
Well, I think you and I both got over trusting the plan during the lockdowns. So
Yeah.
let's be honest. But the truth is, I don't see it being him. Unfortunately, that's not the moves that The dismantling I see was done, in my opinion, by Tulsi Gabbard, and I don't know where Ratcliffe is, but they should be dismantling the entire international network of CIA that are in our embassies all over the world, essentially running foreign policy above our nation and above the last 6 presidents. And I think all these presidents knew this. I also see Scott Bessent and the trade representatives also, because we have been so screwed by the. A lot of my book is about that the war for profit model isn't about the war as much as the reconstruction, and at the time of reconstruction, the capture of capital and resources and all of that in the reconstruction. So for what I'm also seeing is that the trade deals between us and Europe have been so detrimental to our country that I see that as a positive. But again, that's not Trump directly either. But I do see the dismantling of now I am told that Putin and Trump will be having some kind of denuclearization event in 2027, 26, 27, if that happens again. But what I really believe the war is, and like I said, I'm at a place where I don't really look at everything that's going on as Trump. I look at it as either you are pro-America, the country that we were given, that George Washington warned us never to, not stay neutral, not to get involved in foreign countries, and not to allow foreign countries get involved in our country. I believe that Donald Trump would like to go back to the actual functioning constitutional republic, but in the meantime, I think dismantling the system means first dismantling the international intelligence operation that has been running the cover for the system for decades. And that's really where I see that happening.
Let me ask you about the traders in our midst. I want your
Yeah.
opinion on NDAA for 2027, Section 224 and Section 622. This merging of the U.S. military with aspects of the Israeli military is just a bridge too far. It is the end of American sovereignty, and there are Congress critters and senatorial goblins that are for this. And we're hearing word that this was almost penned in part, certainly fostered by Bibi Netanyahu himself. What do you make of it? Because to me, that's absolute treachery. It's treason. I can't think of another name for it than for our quote unquote representatives to support this abomination. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are that it has always been this way, and that they're just putting it on paper finally. I think that it has been like I said, I think Israel has been used as an intelligence hub and a protection hub, and for a lot of different things. And I was dismayed myself. I couldn't believe it. And I don't understand it and why to push it now. And there's people out there, obviously, like Tom Cotton and Pompeo and other people that have very shady things going on with the military industrial complex. And they're part of different groups that are connected to USAID and the entire apparatus that has run these regime change operations for decades. And again, NATO should have been dismantled long ago. It is NATO continues down this path of endless war for profit, creating these situations on the ground with National Endowment for Democracy, USAID, CIA, and the State Department that I don't believe have worked for us since the 50s. So, in my opinion, it's always been that way. That from the beginning, Israel was, and I don't mean the Israeli people or anything else, but that the Mossad and Israel have been partners of the U.S. military and U.S. intelligence. To me, they're both rogue, but the State Department and CIA particularly.
Well, we'll turn directions briefly to the SpaceX IPO, Anthropic, and
Yes.
OpenAI IPOs. Now, SpaceX hit a $3 trillion valuation on Monday with $14 billion in losses since 2023. And I just want to play this brief clip to help set the stage for what I think might be coming if they get away with this, guys. Listen to this.
Assets are going to become harder and harder to own as a result of AI. Now, couple that with tokenization, where they won't even let you own the asset. They want the custodian to own the asset and you to own the token. And you've got these structural paper contracts where they don't want you to own the Bitcoin. They want you to own the paper Bitcoin. So daily life gets cheaper, but ownership gets more expensive. And that's what I think we're witnessing. That's the trend that I'm looking out for. And that's what I think the data is. This is the hidden wealth transfer. So the headlines during this whole thing will say to you, everything's getting cheaper. AI is making everyone's life better. You now have universal basic income. You don't need to work. But it is a wealth transfer between those different things that are happening. And so the middle class was effectively built upon ownership. That was the boomers after world wars that were able to get the real estate at an affordable rate. They were able to leverage up the debt. They own the property. They own the businesses. They own the stocks. They have the savings. And AI essentially threatens to separate consumption from ownership.
I'll pause it there. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about SpaceX, but your thoughts on that, because I think it's very, very true. And this is the greatest wealth transfer happening in real time. Real assets are going to end up in the hands of these same powerful people and their families.
Yeah, this has been the biggest problem for me with Trump, particularly, I mean, it's gut-wrenching to watch him pal around with Mark Zuckerberg, who put in $400 million to beat him in 2020, as we know. And I believe a lot of those people are all in on this. Now, I have to tell you, it does appear to me that Trump and his family are aligned with, because who's really pushing this at the top is Larry Fink, and the World Economic Forum is pushing for tokenization of everything on planet Earth, including nature and everything else, and full track and trace surveillance from birth to death under the guise of healthcare. So this is I don't see Trump doing anything to stop the full track and trace surveillance system that is being built here by the same people that built it in China. And again, a lot of those people are linked to DARPA and CIA, and they were never just, some guy who created Facebook in his dorm, or, two guys over in San Francisco that came up with Google in their garage. All that's BS. The goal has always been, this takes you back to the Rockefellers in the 70s talking about it. I think the whole goal is to enslave humanity completely, and that the technology is finally caught up for full technocratic totalitarianism on a global scale, global governance model, which of course Barack Obama signed us on in 2015, and trillions of dollars have gone into building this global public infrastructure, which is already built. And essentially, what the scariest part is, it does appear that nobody is stopping the transfer of power to a different kind of architecture, which is the AI global public infrastructure, interoperable ID architecture of biometrics and full surveillance and tokenization and digital money. A lot of this, though, I believe has become so mainstreamed and normalized because the architecture of post-World War II is being challenged for the first time. It's being seen because of how I think ridiculously they went over the top with the pandemic. And I think that a lot of this was in place before Trump got into office. And certainly the infrastructure was built before he got back in this time. But the relationships with Palantir and with Musk and Oracle and all of these people, very scary to me, again, as always, is Eric Schmidt, who gets a pass. I don't know why. He seems to me to be even worse than, or as bad as, Bill Gates. But all these people are pushing for this tokenization. Tokenization means to me, like what that guy said, that we will own nothing and be happy. That's the same thing as the Great Reset. And I do not, and that is my biggest issue, I do not see the Trump administration blocking anything Agenda 2030. I don't see them blocking mRNA vaccines. And frankly, I see them investing in that world personally, the family at least. So I think that his family, at least his two sons and his son-in-law, are very much for this totalitarian, technocratic kind of track and trace surveillance system that is essentially to control behavior. And it's disturbing to watch. And I have a feeling that, unfortunately, a lot of this, it's too late to stop. That's why the American people have to start to push back in their daily lives individually every day. And that's kind of what I encourage. But we are on the cusp. If we do lose the midterms, the last 2 years of Donald Trump will be impeachments of Trump and then of everyone around him, including J.D. Vance, probably getting Hakeem Jeffries pushed up in there. But after that, because people don't realize the Democrat Socialist of America, the CARE Muslim Brotherhood candidates, the so-called progressive left, they're all for this. They are for the full track and trace surveillance, no dissent, control of information, control of money, UBI. So they're not necessarily on the same side as Larry Fink and the World Economic Forum, but they do want the same thing, which is, I think, the end of national sovereignty, the end of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights for a technocratic system that is based on full surveillance in every way, including financial.
Well, we're in agreement there, and I guess I would ask you this. Boy, we've got a lot to talk about. I don't know how to maximize 30 minutes of our conversation left, but I'm going to sure try. What do you make of the Trump administration covering up those things I mentioned? It's very clear to me and anybody paying attention that Tyler Robinson was not the lone gunman who took out Charlie Kirk. It's far more likely that it was his Rode microphone packed with some sort of shaped charge made from advanced energetic systems in Tennessee, which then blew up, killing 16 people, all 16 people inside some 30 days later. And
Right.
again, TPUSA, they got nothing to say about this. Erica Kirk, she's got nothing to say about any of it. She wants Tyler Robinson to go to prison for the rest of his life. Meanwhile, Trump is also covering up what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. How do you make sense of any of that?
It's very, very disturbing. I did a show with Ken Silva, who's been covering Butler pretty intensely, and it's hard to believe that we had what happened with JFK in 1961 get, I believe, publicly shot on purpose. They didn't just assassinate him; they shot the whole country and tried to destroy this nation, demoralize. And a lot of ways they succeeded, but that we then allowed the people involved in orchestrating that to be on the Warren Commission and then tell the world this is what happened and case closed, moving on. And we did move on. That we would do this again after what happened in Butler makes no sense to me, unless, of course, well, there can't be anything because I don't believe in this no transparency BS anyway. I don't believe in access denied for reasons of national security. So I haven't heard a reason why we haven't heard more about Butler, but through the work of Ken that I was talking about with him the other day, I mean, there's a lot of questions about what happened in Butler, let alone that the guy who shot the kid on the roof, he wasn't the guy that Trump keeps thanking from the Secret Service. It was actually a local cop. And there's just a lot of things that are obviously not being reported. And the only way we're going to find it again, 2 of the men that were injured and are, for life going to pay for it with disabilities are suing the DOJ because of the lack of information about what happened in Butler, and they want to get to the bottom of how it could have happened. So that's our only hope. They are not going there, and I do not know why. But citizens that were affected are going there, and we have to support them and push for transparency on a lot of things. The turning point thing it's just so disturbing in so many ways because, to me, whatever happened, it's just they're not being. This is the other thing about this Trump administration. They might love Carolyn Levitt and you and I both know they picked all these influencers. That used to be like giant Trump MAGA influencers that they now consider their main journalists. And some of these people haven't even done a tenth of the work you and I have done and know nothing about anything beyond the daily news that they read. And yet those are the people they choose. So it does seem to me not only is this it's completely opposite of what we deserve, which is full and total transparency of everything. But worse than that, I believe that they surrounded themselves with people that are okay with that. And the people that they chose to be their, White House podcast, crew,
Yeah.
don't push them. And so unless, there's like one person, Cara Castronova and maybe Allison Steinberg, that actually ask real questions, but everyone else just seems like, okay. And then the other side, the intelligence media, they're just so combative because we don't even have anyone asking questions, Sean. It's not just that they're hiding it. It's that it seems like an entire apparatus around them is uninterested in getting the truth. Like there is no interest in the truth, which is more disturbing to me because with what we're seeing with the age restrictions on the internet, which has nothing to do with children or anything else, this has to do with controlling the message. Well, all of the things that you just listed are 100% controlling the message operations, and they stop at sorry, no more information here. And I can't explain it, but I know that I think the PR and the way that they are handling a lot of that is terrible, and it's making people a lot more angry because holding back stuff from us was not what we were promised, and it is very disturbing to watch. But I have to pray that no matter what happens in the end, I still have to believe that God has His hand over it all, and we will find the truth. But
Well,
they have reasons, obviously, to keep it inside this bubble that other people can't get into, and it's not traditional media doing it this time and mainstream media. It is influencers that they have elevated that continue to act like nothing's happening when real journalists, if they had the opportunity, would ask real questions, and that is not what's happening.
100%. And, was it the X-Files that had the tagline, "The truth is out there"? Well, the truth is
Yeah.
out there, and there are real journalists asking real questions, but they get maligned
Right.
nonstop. Two of them would be Tucker Carlson and, in my opinion, Candace Owens. Now, some people might call them controlled opposition, but I always look for truth wherever I
Hmm.
find it, whoever's willing
Right.
to speak it. And I'll play a clip from John Kirikow on Jeff Dornick's show in just 1 second. But in the Monday, June 15th broadcast from Candace Owens, boy, did she uncover something very, very interesting about Corey Comparator. Now, this is the
Right.
man who died at Butler.
Right.
And you guys should go back and listen to the entire broadcast because she does an excellent job talking about, I'm going off memory here, I might get this wrong, but an exotic explosive. I think it's a PETN might be the acronym for this particular explosive, a very exotic explosive, just a mere 6 grams of which used in those pagers by Israel blew the hands and eyeballs and sometimes killed people in, where was that? In Lebanon, Palestine?
Yeah. I
With
think it was in Lebanon, right?
Yeah, with the pager incident. And
Yeah.
then Bibi comes to the United States and gifts Donald J. Trump a golden pager. Now, I'm sorry, guys, that's just sick, but it's also very braggadocious. They're proud of this stuff. And it reminds me of that 60 Minutes clip where the Mossad agent says, "The world is our stage." And we
Mm.
run all these shell companies and shell corporations. Well, that's exactly how they pulled off that pager scam because they control the supply chain. It's a brilliant piece of journalism by Candace Owens. And evidently, Corey Comparator had information about PTEN explosives, if I'm saying that
Mm.
correctly. But here's the thing, the elephant in the room, I always come back to the state of Israel. So, and by the way, I fully understand that the Jews are being played here by the Rothschilds, who really aren't Jews at all, but they hide behind that. And, in regarding the JFK assassination, let me play this clip. John Kirikow on Jeff Dornick's show.
I have it on good authority from a friend of mine at the White House who told me that the president had not declassified the remaining 10 to 15,000 pages of Kennedy assassination documents because every page of them pointed directly at Israel.
Now, I could continue to play that clip. Dornick makes some good points. You guys get the idea, but just to maximize our time, Mel, all roads seem to lead back to Israel as the elephant in the room in so many ways. And Trump, bowing to Bibi for so very long. We'll play a clip from Trump in just 1 second, which is refreshing. But, when people like Benny Johnson and Tim Pool, forgive me, I know you've been on his show. I haven't, and I don't care for Tim. But when they say America is so back because of the UFC event, the bread and
Oh
circuses
God.
at the White House over this past weekend, give me a break. Those are two gentlemen who refuse to talk about Israel and the influence of Israel over our government, the buying and paying for our representatives, and NDAA Section 224 and 622. And until these people start talking about those things, I call them knee benders. So the state of MAGA, I guess, is the real question I'm asking you about here.
Yeah, I mean, it's very unclear to me the actual infrastructure of who's running things over in Israel, because he's not, Netanyahu isn't very liked, and a lot of this, I believe, is a venture of the City of London. I still do, which of course, you know, the City of London is the is the hub of the Rothschild and banking system, and I believe the Five Eyes nations as well. But as I said, I think the state of MAGA is, it's completely fractured. It's sad to see. A lot of it is not just because, like you said before, I don't take any opinion about Tucker or Candace or any of the rest of them. I'd like to judge people how they treat me and what I get out of them. But the truth is, it's really the messaging coming out of the Trump administration that is dividing MAGA the most. And that's the worst part. Be it Susie Wiles and her interview in Vanity Fair was such a slap in the face to everyone. Like, that was the first thing I saw. Then,
I missed that. I missed that.
Yeah.
What was most egregious about that? I missed it.
That she did it at all. I mean, let's be honest, that she did it at all. And you know, to me, I thought Susie Wiles and also Pam Bondi were DeSantis people, even when they went in there. And I wasn't surprised about a lot of it. But her doing an interview for that, she had 11 hours. She sat with the writer of the Vanity Fair interview and said a lot of things that were very clear, that the base that follows Donald Trump and Susie Wiles, to me, seemed like they weren't on the same side at all. And so that's the one first thing. And then the second thing is, I was never a fan of Pam Bondi because of what happened with the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman case. I know what she did. I know how she worked with Holder and Crump to start the whole Black Lives Matter thing. So I didn't like those people. But like I said, the messaging coming out is not at all what MAGA was about for the entire time until he took office this time. And at that point, I don't know. I do think Marco Rubio's doing a good job. I was heartbroken to see Tulsi Gabbard leaving. And also, a lot of these people don't seem to have the balls to actually call anything treason or sedition when that is what we're dealing with. If we have a country that no longer has legal people on the AG or DOJ level or military level that can call treason and sedition what it is when they have evidence, other than Tulsi Gabbard is essentially the only person who's even uttered those words, then again, Trump will, if Trump leaves office without getting serious accountability and transparency, the legacy of Trump and MAGA will end. And I, you know, a lot of people don't like Vance because they see Vance as a mirror image of the creation that was Barack Obama. People don't know where he came from other than that Peter Thiel picked him up and somehow he got wrote a memoir that got an Academy Award. All this stuff is very improbable.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think they're thinking that they're going to slip in JD Vance, but I can tell you from my own followers and stuff, they're very skeptical. You know, a lot of people that I deal with a lot, they were furious about the mRNA still being there, and a lot of this stuff going on that seems to be multinational corporation based rather than America first based. So there's just so many layers. The Israel layer is one that, like I said, I still am not very clear on who really runs Israel, as I am not clear on who runs a lot of things in these places, including Iran. So to me, I just think the MAGA movement was split again. In the biggest way was first when they invited people that have big accounts, like you and I get kicked off of stuff. I mean, we rebuilt multiple times. I mean, but they were picking people to get credentials at the White House based on their amount of followers on X.
Laura Loomer.
When many of us had, you and me included, like 3 years of no activity at all, while the Posobiec's and Benny's and the rest of them, you know, were never taken off. But they were judging who to bring into the White House to cover the White House by how many followers they had on X. I know that that's true. And again, and then they're pumping them up from the back. I mean, the worst thing I think that's happened is that Doge didn't keep going, and that the people that Doge was catching, like Samantha Power and Mayorkas and all these people, they haven't even been held accountable at all. We are 2 years in, and I haven't seen Mayorkas questioned about the open border. I haven't seen Samantha Power questioned about billions and billions of dollars that left this country through USAID into black holes. I haven't seen, any of the governors be arrested. They can be arrested because fraud happened on them. So, what we're dealing with now is a country that is $37 trillion in debt, and U.S. taxpayers that want some answers and want some action and accountability. And we have had none. And that is the thing that bothers me the most. We haven't had it with the Obama and Clinton and Crossfire Hurricane and all of that crap. We haven't had it with the Auto Pen administration and all of the January 6th and all of that. And then Trump goes on with Miranda Devine and says, oh, no, we know the 2020 election was stolen. We know who stole it. We know this and that. And it's like, well, we don't care if you know. We deserve to know. The people deserve to know. And what we have again is, it's not the intelligence press of MSNBC and CNN. It's a different kind that doesn't even ask the questions that you and I would ask first. So again, I feel like the true, at least those of us that put our asses on the line, like me and you, have way more questions than answers than we should have at this point. And that is where I believe the breakup, the shattering of MAGA lies is really straight at the White House. And I'm sorry to say that to them, but it's true.
Well, it is true. And I'll quote him. Epstein? We still talking about Epstein? And, he did that. He said that. He's the one that is on the list. Okay. And there's some pretty serious allegations waged against him. And without an investigation, who would know if they're true? But he told Marjorie Taylor Greene, evidently, according to her, that these are my friends, Marjorie. These are my friends. I mean, let's just make this go away because these are people at Mar-a-Lago. My friends are on that list. But you know what? I'll throw them a bone. We need to hear more of this from Donald J. Trump.
Israel's fighting Hezbollah too long and too many people are being killed. And you don't have to knock down an apartment house every time you're looking for somebody because there are a lot of people in those apartment houses and they're not all Hezbollah, that I can tell you. And I suggested to Israel to let Syria take care of Hezbollah.
You know what? I'm trying to throw him a bone, but if you guys want to look into the funding of Hezbollah,
Syria, I know. Can you imagine?
Honestly, Mel, okay, here's the thing. I'll throw him a bone because at least he's trying to scold Israel and Bibi Netanyahu to some extent. But here's the hard truth about Israel from James Lee.
People will say, Israel isn't our enemy. They are our greatest ally. Our greatest ally, TM. But actually, no. Not according to them, we aren't.
The U.S. and Israel do not have the same interests. And people who pretend that they do, like Mark Levin, it's, and I'm talking from the Israel side. I'm sitting in Israel. I live in Israel. My kids fight in the Israeli army. I served in the Israeli army. That is where my concern is. I immigrated to this country. But pretending that the U.S. and Israel have the same interests is just a recipe for misunderstanding what we're seeing here.
Loud and clear.
Okay, well, I'm not sure that necessarily vets out the point I'm trying to make, other than the point I like to make time and time again, is there are Jewish people in Israel that march against Bibi Netanyahu and Zionism, just as there are Jews all over the world and in New York City. So let's make the distinction between Rothschild Zionism and the Jewish people that I think got hoodwinked to move there and be used by the Rothschilds. That's my personal opinion.
Well, I'm not sure about any of that because it's always been confusing to me what is going on. But I do know that, at least from my own work, that there are international financial interests that had a lot of interest in what in the Balfour Declaration and all of that. At this point, though, I think we should remember that Bibi Netanyahu also bragged about forcing every single person in Israel to get the vaccine. And that Israel was the essentially the laboratory for Pfizer. Yeah. I don't. And remember, he was born in Cheltenham, Pennsylvania. Like he wasn't born in Israel.
Yeah, his real name is Milikowski. His real name is Milikowski, not Netanyahu.
And he went to MIT, I think. So again, I just want to say the supranational architecture that I believe Epstein was a part of, I also believe he's a part of. I know that it's hard to really digest such a thing that the people that are leading countries really aren't working for the countries that they live in. But It's becoming more and more obvious to me, though, that the endless war for profit model, the all of the same things that I'm talking about that started when two Wall Street lawyers kind of turned our State Department into a tentacle of the international banking cartel. That is, again, who I think both Epstein and many of these people, including, it appears to me, Netanyahu, actually work for.
Let me just make the point. Jeffrey Epstein is to Bibi and Rothschild what Jimmy Savile is to King Charles. It's the same model. It's really the same model. Jimmy Savile was a well-known trafficker and abuser and murderer of children. He was also into necrophilia, and he was best friends with Prince Charles, now King Charles, the progenitor of the World Economic Forum. You'll eat nothing, you'll own nothing and be happy, and you will eat the bugs. I mean, that's what we're up against. So Epstein really is very much like Jimmy Savile, whose crimes were covered up for more than 30 years at the BBC.
Yeah, it's disgusting. I can't even believe it. But at the same time, I do think that we have a legitimate problem on American soil with the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE as well. So the other thing that's happening is by not being very clear about what's going on, people are picking sides on our soil, and that scares me a little, because when you look back into the history of ISIS or Hamas or any of this, they seem to be operations of the international cartel and like I think is happening on our soil right now. I think that the color revolution on our soil is paid for by this self-protecting supranational entity that includes the Council of Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission and the Bilderberg Group and all these groups that we, kind of point to. But if you really look at them and put the names together and everything together, you're going to see that they're all, it's basically a revolving door of the same people, same names. And one thing I do want to say, the controlled demolition of the banking system in 2008 and the aftermath, I am sure you remember when Bernanke said that they had sent $500 billion at the time, a lot more money than it is now, or sounded like it, to the central banks. And he was questioned, and he said, to what central banks? He said, I don't know. And they couldn't answer where $500 billion of U.S. taxpayer money went during the worst financial hit on the middle class. And then, of course, I believe the pandemic not only was released on purpose, but I also believe that that was a hit on the middle class as well. So again, I think that this is happening all over the world. And I think that to separate it, the whole idea, though, that, when people say that, it's the Jews or whatever, I mean, this is a very, most Jews don't even, in America at least, don't even practice Judaism at all.
By the way, many of them don't speak this language. Many of them probably don't know what a central bank is, privately owned, Federal Reserve.
No.
I mean, in fairness, I want to make that point as well. But this does seem to be there's an existential threat against our very sovereignty in that 2027 NDAA. And there's one nation state that is in it. Okay, so it's not the Muslim Brotherhood that somehow got inserted into the 2027 NDAA. But I understand your point.
Well, you're seeing him make a lot of deals with Qatar. So, I mean, there's that too.
And $300 billion, by the way, for Iran to try to make this war go away that needed not to happen in the first place, and Trump promised it wouldn't happen. $300 billion in reparations is on the table for Iran to open the straits back up. So, I mean, at $300 billion, that would have gone a long way for we the people who we have infrastructure falling apart. Our healthcare system is a joke. The cities compared to Asia and China, we have no bullet trains connecting every major city. I mean, our country's falling apart. Meanwhile, a war we were promised that would never happen happened under Trump's watch. And I want to be respectful of your time. You probably have another interview at the top of the hour. So in, say, the 8, 9, 10 minutes we have left, I want to share this, and I want to ask you, and by the way, let me just say this. By the way, a caveat for my audience. The last time I didn't heed Warren Buffett's advice was in the year 2000, 2001, when he went to cash. And then the internet bubble exploded and went down. The NASDAQ went down some 80, 90% in a matter of 2 years. So he's sitting on $400 billion in cash now as the lemmings pile into SpaceX with Anthropic and OpenAI on the horizon. SpaceX now is a $3 trillion market cap with some of these pundits, believe it or not, strong buy on Wall Street. They're all saying strong buy. Buyer beware is what I would say.
Me too.
$14 billion in losses since 2023. And these projections of a 30, 40, $50 trillion SpaceX valuation in the future, these are based on hopes, promises, projections, and beliefs. You have to believe that Elon can build space rockets to go and mine asteroids. You have to believe he's going to send human beings to Mars. You have to believe that to buy this IPO. And I'll tell you guys, there's nothing new under the sun. So when Warren Buffett is in $400 billion in cash, well, you've got my caveat. Some of the biggest men in the United States are afraid of something. They know there's something somewhere, so organized, subtle, watchful, and so interlocked and complete, so pervasive that they better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. You and I both know what that is. I've identified what that is for my audience repeatedly. Why did you start your book with a time period 1944 to 1954 instead of 1910 and Jekyll Island?
Because 1910 and Jekyll Island is the beginning of the infiltration, the full transfer of our sovereignty to the international banking cartel happened in the period I'm talking about. First of all, Bretton Woods was the world financial structure that includes the IMF and the World Bank. You and I both know the World Bank is a black hole and the IMF is a racket. And they both have immunity since 1945, as does the Bank of International Settlements. But in 1944, before Hitler surrendered, and again, I hate that using Nazis. I'd rather use totalitarian eugenicists. But before Hitler surrendered, the international bankers, internationalists, the multinational corporations, two lawyers from Wall Street, the Dulles brothers being them, and a bunch of Himmler and a bunch of Hitler's bankers all met in France. It was declassified, of course, by the CIA, called the Red House Papers. And they decided that they would find ways to get as much money. So the looting, laundering, murder, everything that happened, about 60 million people affected in Europe during World War II, that money went somewhere and it went to the Bank of International Settlements and in and out between that group. And that group consisted of the Nazi bankers, the American bankers. It was run by an American, McKittrick, the Bank of England and the City of London, and then the 5 banks that are connected there. And what they did with people from all different corporations like Krupp and Zeiss and IG Farben, which broke up into 5, was, I believe, before Hitler surrendered, they laundered out as much money as they possibly could because they had agreed that they would let Germany fall, but that they would not let the Reich fall, and that they would come back and rebuild the Reich for a third attempt at what they wanted, which was a unified Europe running the world. So it is my belief that in 44, they started laundering out the money into Italy, then Argentina, and Perón was obviously on the side of the Nazis, as I believe the Dulles brothers were as well. And they started laundering it into America, into subsidiaries of those companies, into shell companies, a lot of money. I'm talking hundreds of millions of dollars into savings, essentially, because I believe they planned the Third World War before Hitler surrendered. And when you follow that trail and you see all of the workings between Standard Oil of New Jersey, which is the Rockefellers, and IG Farben before World War II, and in the rebuilding up of the machinery and the weaponry and the industry and everything after World War I to put Hitler where he was and what was going on. So Hitler goes away. No, I don't think what we were told happened, and so these other people go away, but it was really our government, particularly the Dulles brothers, McCloy, and Truman, unfortunately, I feel like was used, as other people were, to sign the 1947 creation of the CIA, NSC, DOD, and all of that. But as I said, I think that this entire Red House meeting then led to decades long of planning for a third world war that was supposed to happen, I believe, under Hillary Clinton. I think that we have been greatly deceived. And like I said, looking for a nation to blame is the wrong move from my work. I believe that this group, this international banking cartel and global public-private partnership architecture that was built in that period of time built itself to last and to be above any nation and to outlast the men that created and to outlast anyone after them, so that no nation's really democratic system and elections meant anything ever again, because they wanted to keep the endless war for profit model continuous throughout, I don't know, I guess forever. And that's where I see all of this. When you bring up Epstein or some of the other things, what I see is an infrastructure that was built purposely to survive no matter what above nations, and to make sure that the people of nations knew nothing about it. And, the NGOs that were also part of these meetings was the Rockefeller, Carnegie, and Ford Foundation. They were all involved as well. And I think people have to look into Operation Paperclip, because it was the tip of the iceberg. And it's not Nazis. These are totalitarian people that believe in totalitarian regime, and they believe in eugenics, and they don't believe in dissent, and they believe in controlling the information. Well, thousands of them came to America and were put in by our own military and our own government into institutions, into academia, into starting whole new realms of study like sociology. It gets to a place where you realize they have no allegiance or alliance to any nation, to any flag, to any people, to any religion, to anything. It is power for power's sake, and they never want to let that power get into the hands of the people. And I think the mechanism for that is endless war for profit, and current and regular destruction and rebuilding. And during the rebuilding is when they consolidate. And I think World War III was not only planned and kicked off in the 90s when George Soros wrote the NATO World Order and Clinton bombed Yugoslavia, but I believe that Ukraine was always going to be used as the hub for that war. As you know, Alan Dulles made sure that none of the Ukrainian Nazis, and of course, Ukraine was the home of the SS, the worst of the worst. None of them were held accountable, and they were essentially, Dulles told people to leave them alone. So they never went away. And I think this ideology has grown to a place where essentially they wanted to have World War III, destroy Russia again. And then after that, the consolidation and solution, if you think of David Icke, is Agenda 2030. Yeah. So to me, that's where I think we dodged a bullet with Trump winning, because that would have already happened. But again, I do think that it's a intelligence operation at the top that needs to be dismantled. And if it's not, our sovereignty will never come back, because right now we have none. We have dozens, including the IMF and the World Bank and the UN, of international organizations on U.S. soil that U.S. has no jurisdiction over in any way. We should not have, international hubs that the United States can't investigate, can't audit, has no jurisdiction to have any kind of, opening of the books or anything. They are all over because of that International Organization Immunity Act of 1945. The BIS and IMF, World Bank, and 63 other banks to this day have complete and total immunity from search and seizure, from investigation. Most of them don't even pay taxes. You can't audit them. And the worst part is, at the same time, they gave it to the United Nations, and 76 tentacles of the United Nations, including UNESCO, World Health Organization, they all also still have this extraordinary amount of immunity on our soil. So we have all of these international organizations and banks on the soil of the United States of America that our FBI and DOJ and police and have zero jurisdiction over. And to me, that needs to be rescinded, that International Organization Immunity Act. I think that the 1947 creation of the CIA, it's a one-page document, very vague on purpose. The Wall Street lawyers noticed the Dulles did that by design. I think that has to be removed. But again, if he is not dismantling the international banking system and their protection racket known as the CIA MI6 Five Eyes, then, nobody else is going to do it after this.
I want to ask you one more question, but do you have a heart out? Or do you have 5 more minutes?
I have 5 minutes, Rob.
All right. Real quick here, just a statement. Here's the 5D chess information, guys. If you think Elon Musk is the world's first trillionaire, I got some bridges in Brooklyn to sell you, because Look, the land that the United Nations headquarters sits on in New York City was donated by the Rockefellers. And
Right.
just like JP Morgan, it was revealed after Morgan's death that he was a foot soldier for the Rothschilds, who have far, far more wealth than JP Morgan did upon his death. And he was, I think, the country's richest man when he died. So here's the 5D chess. Israel is the elephant in the room that's being used to usurp U.S. sovereignty, but I don't blame the nation state specifically. I mean, I do, but I get your point, right? You said we can't blame just any nation because it's bigger than that. I blame
Yeah.
the family behind the nation state of Israel, the Rothschilds, Nat Rothschild, who's now the kingpin of the family, and his friends like Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump and the Trump family, who have and enjoy a kinship with the Rothschilds, obviously, because they were on their friends' quote unquote boat.
Yes.
So, but here's my question regarding this AI bubble, AI data centers, and how do we extricate ourselves from this coming nightmare, this track and trace nightmare? We got to pray this AI bubble and the AI infrastructure bubble stocks all pop and that this thing crumbles under its own weight. Because, you know, as Catherine Austin Fitts has said regarding the red button, a lot of people are unwilling to hit the red button if it means their stock portfolio, their pensions, their 401k, their IRAs plummet in value. But that's what needs to happen. That's why I would caution people to maybe take Warren Buffett's advice and not invest in your own future slavery. How do we extricate ourselves from this thing, in your view?
Well, one of the first things we should do is ban public pensions from being traded or handled by BlackRock. BlackRock and Vanguard are the funders of the international, I believe, technocratic, totalitarian track and trace surveillance system. At least they're underwriting it. And the sad part is that most U.S. public pensions are paying for it through BlackRock. So that's the first thing. I can't believe that it has not been dealt with. And above that, it is every person every day pushing away. And I agree with you. You know what? I've looked a lot into this. I don't think any of the technology is ready for prime time. I think it is not. Like you said, a lot of it is speculation. But from what I see, much of what they're saying they can do, especially when the guy for Larry, whatever his name is, from Oracle speaks, or even Elon Musk says every house is going to have a robot that will be able to walk its dog and take care of its elderly and raise its children. Nobody wants that. You know, I feel like there's a, you know, as I say at the end of my show, stay human. There is a human element that is trying to be erased. And if people can see it and do everything in their power every day in their own personal lives to reject it, like don't get your eyes scanned at the airport and go watch Minority Report again. But if people are walking in eyes wide open as they are, and Hollywood's all in on it, they already financed it and everyone else, then it's gonna be the pushback of the people. But again, I don't see them stopping the central bank digital currency in DC either. So again, it's going to come down to doing what we do and hoping that there's enough people out there, which I think there are. I really do think that there's a lot more people than certainly when I started this 6 years ago. But it's going to be up to the people to push back locally on surveillance, push back locally on digital, push back locally on what they're putting into our schools. I think that's the most dangerous, is the AI push for our children in schools, because I know what happened during the lockdowns with the creating dossiers on all of our children. And again, fighting for data privacy. And we don't even have a Bill of Rights for the internet or for our data. I mean, there's just all this stuff that's being ignored as we go. This is my biggest problem with all the war stuff, is like people are distracted from Agenda 2030, which I believe is still on track. And if it's still on track, then that's our own government not doing anything to pull out or at least throw sand in the gears. So people just have to be aware that Agenda 2030 has not been thwarted at all. Yeah. And that's important to get.
Yeah, 1,000%. UN Agenda 2030. You will own nothing and you won't be happy and you will eat the bugs if you listen to them. Now, here's where you get the book. By the way, guys, stay human. Very, very good advice, because nobody wants what they're pitching. Nobody wants it. No. Nobody wants it. Infiltration instead of invasion. Pre-order right now, huh?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. And how do people catch your show?
TheMelKShow.com. I have a daily news show to go through a lot of the insanity every day, Monday through Friday, 12 to 1:30, live on X and Rumble. And I still do interviews, not as much as I'd like, but great ones on the weekends at The Mel K Show. Everywhere you can find it, but Rumble is my main hub.
All right, very good. And guys, one last word. There's a school of thought that these wars, World War I, World War II, they were contrived wars to end the old world and usher in this new dystopic world. And boy, they seem to be getting their ways. It was the Mother Rothschild who famously said, if my sons didn't want there to be wars, there would be no wars. So stick that one in your pipe and do some research. Our guest has been Mel K. We appreciate you, Mel.
Thank you, Sarah. See you next time. Appreciate it.
All right. Yep. God bless.
Bye-bye.
There she goes, friends. All right. I remind you guys every single day for free. Check us out, won't you? To get the real news 24/7, the antidote to corporate propaganda and the knee benders' lies. Yeah, I'm talking to you, Insurrection Barbie, Gunther Eagleman, Paramount Not So Tactical. I'm talking to you, Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, all of you unrestrained liars over on X. May your chains rest lightly upon you. And until next time, guys, may God, the Creator, continue to bless you and yours. Bye-bye.
If the only thing you do right now after listening to this, you go out into nature and you lie down on the ground, you'll see why the animals all sleep on the earth, right? You are designed to be in connection to the earth. And it says in the Bible, God made man dust of the earth and breathed into Adam's nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. And what happened was that we got disconnected from earth. But when we're connected to it, you look at trees that have lived 4,000 plus years. What did they have that causes them to live to 4,000 years? And they're connected to the earth's magnetic field.